Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of the Evangelion podcast you cannot rewatch. I'm David.
And I am Dylan.
And we are recording from the same location again, so hopefully the audio is all okay. Because that's what we're doing.
Yep.
Normally I have different audio tracks, so hopefully everything sounds good on the single track. So we're talking about episode 20, so make sure you've, rewatch that and everything. I get tired of saying that.
You know the drill.
But, you know the drill. But if you're unfamiliar with this episode, if you just want us to remind you what it is, it's the one where Shinji is trapped inside of the Evangelion in the sea of LCL or whatever. You can leave that open if you want. I don't care.
Oh, I was going to go to the Ava Geeks website.
Okay, well, that works too. So Dylan's going to pull that up in case we need to reference that. But so this episode, I don't know how to talk about this episode, I guess. The whole time we were watching it, we just watched it. I was trying to think about what to say about this one because it's pretty... Sorry, there might be some noise on the mic there because Dylan's fucking everything up.
Sorry.
Go
for it.
It's I don't know what to say about this one. It's a weird one. I think after the craziness of the last couple episodes in terms of like what happens in the story, this one is very crazy, like more internally. It's similar in some ways to episode 16 because Shinji is once again trapped inside a location, and it's more like him being introspective and reflective of his life and what life is. It's a pretty existential episode.
Yeah, it's a lot of psychological kind of stuff to it.
Yeah. So in some ways that makes it harder to talk about. I guess we should get used to talking about this because we're going to talk about End of Evangelion, and it's 2 hours of that. I guess we'll start with the episode opening. It opens up with I don't remember if this was the actual first shot or not. I think first of all we get like a recap of what happened just in case you forgot. He ate it. But then there's a SEELE meeting where this is I think this might be the first time we've seen a SEELE meeting without Gendo at all.
I think so, yeah.
It's just SEELE talking about Gendo. And they have some kind of weird analogy about putting a bell around his neck that goes on for way too long.
Well, what's the point of a bell if it doesn't ring?
Well, next time we'll listen closely to the bell.
What's the point of this analogy without the point?
But yeah, basically they're just saying Gendo's obviously up to something, which is not what we want him to be up to. Then we find out, Unit 1's being restrained now, and it looks a little bit different than we remember it because it's got like what would you call that?
Bandage?
Bandages, yeah. I guess.
There's like symbols on the bandages. Is that like important for anything, or is that just...
Oh, is there symbols on the...
Yeah, see there's like things on it?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, we got the image pulled up, but I don't know. But anyways, we learned Shinji is trapped inside of his Evangelion. I think we mentioned that was going to happen last week, but obviously this is a rewatch, so hopefully you knew that. But that's what happens when your sync ratio is at 400%, or at least around that. I don't know if it could happen before that too, but basically, when you're synced up too much with an Eva, you literally fuse with it. Like, you literally become a part of it. And that's what's happened to Shinji. And they say that his body essentially deconstructed, and that it's all of the elements of his body are still floating around in the LCL, I guess, but they're like, they dematerialized, I guess. How would you describe that? Is that the best way to describe that? Deatomized or something?
Yeah, deatomized sounds...
I don't know. But apparently, like, every cell or whatever is still in there. They're just in a deconstructed format. So they attempt to reconstruct him. Interesting thing about Asuka's character, we see her reaction, and she doesn't seem at all upset that Shinji's, in a bunch of goo.
No.
But she's very upset that she was completely powerless against the Angel, and once again Shinji came and saved the day. Because, of course, Asuka validates her entire existence based around being a Neva pilot, which is kind of what Shinji does too.
Yeah.
But Asuka considers that the only purpose of her life.
Yeah.
And she is now facing the fact that her life has no purpose because the only thing that she had going for her is no longer there.
Well, I feel like that's too. It's like she's the only pilot right now who's not injured at all. So it probably even injures her pride even more because it makes it seem like all the other ones had to protect her and like got hurt just trying to protect her.
That's true. Yeah, she was the first one, and she was the most useless.
Yeah.
This isn't really hinted at, but I would imagine that some of that is her legitimately concerned about Shinji and maybe even Rei, but she would never admit that.
No. Yeah.
Like, I'm sure that's rolled up in there somewhere, but again, she's literally facing the fact that her entire existence has no purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess is kind of what Shinji deals with in a minute. But there's a lot of I wrote down Shinji's science shit. They have a big conversation about like what it means that Shinji is in this form or whatever. There's a lot of words in this episode that they use that I don't think are words.
Real words. Yeah. The problem I had is I normally watch it dubbed.
Yeah.
So that one scene where people are like shadowed out and they're talking, I didn't know who was saying whatever. It was like so confusing.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm not used to their voice acting in Japanese.
Yeah. I'm not either, so I don't know. To me, this is probably gonna sound racist. It all kind of sounds the same.
Yeah.
But that's just how it is. And I haven't really been able to get a distinction between their voices. And it doesn't help that they're speaking a different language. Like, if they were speaking English with those same voices, I could probably tell them apart. But it's already so confusing to hear words I don't know. I'm not really paying attention to who's saying them.
Yeah.
But anyways, one thing I want to point out, Shinji starts to have some, like, hallucinations or visions or whatever you would want to call it. He's essentially just going through his mind and pulling up imagery while he's in this state that he's in. But he gets several shots of a beach, which is the beach we see in End of Evangelion. This is also the beach in the recent short film Until You Come to Me. And this is something we wouldn't have picked up if this hadn't happened recently, but I just thought that was really interesting. Because I think that same shot is in End of Evangelion. I think it's been a while since I watched it. But it's really interesting that shot from the short film is also here in episode 20. Well, so even anybody that rewatched this probably noticed that.
Even some of, like... Because they have a bunch of montage of images afterwards, too.
Yeah.
Even the way those images kind of
It's pretty reminiscent.
It was very reminiscent of that short film.
Yeah, I think that actually has some... I mean, I guess you could argue that happens in End of Evangelion, too. So maybe it's more being inspired by that. But, this episode actually has a lot of parallels, I think, to End of Evangelion. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just think that's interesting. I'm sure anybody else who watched this recently after watching that short film probably picked up on that, too. But... I guess in another way, this is pretty parallel to End of Evangelion. Once again, Shinji has, just as he will in the movie, become one with the LCL, with his Eva. And of course, in End of Evangelion, he becomes one with everybody. Mm-hmm. But it's a very similar situation because Shinji essentially doesn't want to go back to regular life, but ultimately decides to. So this pretty much foreshadows, I guess, the ending mm-hmm. of End of Evangelion, which is something I didn't appreciate the first time I watched the show. It was on a rewatch. Actually... This is an episode I totally forgot happened.
Oh, yeah.
When I rewatched the show, I was like, wait, there was an episode halfway through the show where where that happened to him? Because I remember that happened in Evangelion. Yeah. But yeah, I'd totally forgotten about that.
Same here. I didn't even realize till this episode now.
Yeah, and I think, too, like, we benefit from doing a week apart for each episode. When I watched the show, it was marathon style.
Yeah.
And so with how crazy episode 19 was, I was still thinking about all of that stuff. This episode was kind of a blur to me, I think, right. Because there had been so much in the last couple of episodes. This is a show it's not necessarily best to marathon just because so much happens that you need to kind of take in mm-hmm. and give yourself time, especially the first time you watch it.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so Shinji starts questioning some stuff. What's the point of doing anything? Like, what's the point of existing? Like, what am I existing for? And he starts questioning stuff about his enemies, like, why are we fighting the angels? And then he realizes that he kind of views the true enemy as his father. There's some stuff with that. Outside of Shinji's head, or whatever you want to call it, they talk a little bit about the Reconstruction experiment that they're trying to do. And they mention that it was done 10 years ago, which, of course, we know was Yui, Shinji's mom. Mm-hmm. But I guess they don't flat out say that. But, of course, she was merged into the Eva originally, and they tried to get her out. It's been a while, so I don't totally remember... Did Yui want to go in? Maybe they never say this. Did Yui want to go into Unit 1? Because I was under the impression she did.
I think it's really confusing. I think in the series it's kind of confusing, but I think in the rebuilds they definitely make it seem like she did it on purpose.
Yeah, but I wonder if that's how it was in the show too, and nobody else wanted that. Like, she didn't tell Gendo she was going to do that, and so that's why he tried to get her out. But I always got the impression like she did that for the cause.
I think that she did, and I think maybe it kind of is hard to pick up on. So maybe that's why they made it so obvious in the rebuilds.
That could be, yeah.
That she kind of sacrificed herself.
Yeah, but I don't know. If anybody knows for sure, let us know. There's there's like a sequence where Shinji starts imagining all the girls of the show, or the three main girls he's interested in romantically or sexually, whatever you want to call it, offering him sex. They have no nipples in this scene.
No.
Which we were commenting on when we were watching. I guess that my guess is that that's a rating thing because we pointed out like in the movie and in the rebuilds they have nipples. So could you just not show that on TV if they had nipples? But like in the movie, it's a movie, so it's okay since it's not aired on television. I don't know. Is that something we need to talk about? Probably not, but we did.
I'd let you know how this episode's going.
But I mean, pretty much that scene is just what Shinji would want. I mean, he's 14. When you're 14, if there's a hot girl in your life, you're gonna try to you're gonna imagine that stuff and desire that stuff, even though you don't understand it at all. And I mean, even when Shinji's faced with that stuff, like when he tries to just kiss Asuka, like that's a nightmare. Like when you're 14, you want that stuff, but at the same time, you really don't because like it's so
scary,
intimidating. Yeah.
It kind of makes me wonder too. Is that kind of like the whole like instrumentality thing, kind of like telling you to be a part, like trying to persuade you? Like, would that be like the Ava trying to be like, hey, stick with me?
Oh, maybe. Yeah, maybe it's using the imagery of these three girls.
Yeah, to be like, hey, don't you want? Because they all say like, don't you want to be a part of me? Wouldn't that be amazing and stuff like that?
That's true. Yeah, I wonder if that is maybe it taking a form and trying to convince Shinji. But on the other hand, in this case, it's not all of instrumentality. It's just his mom.
Right.
And it always seems like his mom doesn't want to influence him, but she wants to give him the power to choose. So it's possible, but I don't know.
Or maybe she knew that how bad he was with ladies. He's like, I'm going to scare him out of here.
Yeah, then just a brief thing. And I guess this is kind of what we're saying. Like, if this is Shinji's mom presenting this imagery, or whatever it is presenting this imagery, if it's just Shinji's internal thoughts materializing this stuff in images, all of the girls say, "What do you wish?" Misato, Rei, and Asuka say it, and then a fourth figure says it, which seems to be an Evangelion. I guess this unit. I've always assumed that shot is meant to represent Yui. But it's just like it's a flash. You might have missed it. I'll try to put put it in the description, the image. But it's interesting. I don't really have much else to say about it, but it's just an interesting thing to see in there. Right after that, Misato they open up the what's it called, entry plug, and all the stuff spills out. And since Shinji was all inside of that, now that it's all spilled out, like there's gonna be no way to reconstruct him. But he manages to pull himself out of it, I guess. Again, this is kind of foreshadowing the stuff in End of Evangelion, but in that he kind of gets the motivation to do it, and in this it just kind of, it almost seems like it kind of happens. Like he doesn't seem as motivated to come back. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, I guess I'll go.
Yeah.
But during that stuff, he definitely senses his mom. He smells a scent, and he realizes that it's his mom, and this is where we get the impression that Shinji's mom is inside of Unit 1. I guess we kind of got that in 16. That kind of happened in 16, I forgot. But this is just more of that. We get a brief snippet of a conversation that I assume Shinji would have overheard. Or no, he couldn't have overheard because it was before he was born. Where his mom and dad are talking about what they would name the baby. I guess that could have been after he was born. No, it would have been. No, it wouldn't have been because they say if it was a girl.
Yeah.
And if it was after he was born, I think they would have known by that point. But I guess he's maybe either triggering a false memory or somehow triggering one of his mom's memories since she's in there too.
That's true. Because this comes up earlier in the show too, doesn't it?
I don't think so. I think this is the only time this line is said is when they say if they would have a son they'd name it Shinji, and if it was a girl, Rei. Which is interesting. And of course, I guess on the first watch we haven't really confirmed that Rei is like created by Gendo, but knowing that now, obviously he did choose to have a girl in a way and did name her Rei.
Well, that it kind of made it sound like too when Shinji's just like, you didn't need me around because you always had Rei.
Yeah.
Does that mean was there ever a point when Shinji was little that Rei was also around?
Yeah.
You see little girl Rei, so he's familiar that Rei.
Yeah, that happens. But I assume it seems like most of what Shinji remembered at that time was repressed, because he was there. Or no, maybe I am wrong about that. I think I'm getting a couple scenes mixed up from the flashback episode. Because Shinji was there when his mom was put into the unit, because he saw it. He just repressed the memory. And then I guess it would have been a while before Rei was created. I don't know, but Shinji was very young. I think he was 4 when his mom went into the Ava, so I don't think he ran away at 4.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how long it was between that and when Rei was created, Rei 1.
Right.
If he was around her, he obviously repressed the memory because he didn't really know that. And maybe when he says that line, like, you were always a replacement for me, he's remembering that finally. Right. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Either he's remembering it or He's kind of letting out what he always kind of resented about Rey when he saw
Yeah,
Rey
when he
happy
first,
with Gendo and
yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah. The first time when there's that scene when he sees them talking and
Mhm.
she smiles and
Yeah.
he's like, "Fucking bitch."
Yep.
But then Misato goes to bang Kaji.
Mm-hmm.
This is a scene.
This is definitely a scene.
I don't know.
It's a weird scene that I don't understand the purpose of it, other than letting you know that they're banging, which you could probably already assume.
Yeah, well, it's just. I mean, it's obviously to let you know. There's some information traded back and forth, and Kaji obviously gives something to Misato. Looks like a pill. I assume there's some kind of data inside, but it's apparently all the information he has learned about Nerve and everything. But he tries to give it to her weird.
Yeah.
He doesn't just hand it to her. He tries to put it somewhere. I guess.
What kind of pill is? Oh, it's a pill that has data in it, to where like if you swallow it, you're gonna get the data for it. Like,
Well, yeah, I don't know why
shit.
it's in pill form. I assume he did that to like smuggle it so that nobody would suspect. Like,
Right.
oh, there's something in there. I don't know. I assume there's like the obviously it's not like a memory stick, but the equivalent of that in Evangelion universe, like just something small that you could plug into like a computer or whatever that would have a ton of data on it.
Which makes sense. You're trying to give it to her. Doesn't make sense where you're putting it places.
Yeah, I've never understood if there's supposed to be a significance to that scene. Is it supposed to be funny or it's not?
Or maybe he just pulled out a pill and it's supposed to be like her actually be like, hey, don't be trying to put anything in me. And he's just like, oh no, I'm just trying to give this to you, but I don't know. Because it's all
Maybe.
off camera, so who knows what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, imagination could run wild with what's happening in that scene. I guess technically they don't ever say for sure that it was sexual. I mean, we see a quick image of Misato topless and Kaji topless, but maybe they were like, I don't know, playing what's it in Roger Rabbit when patty cake. Maybe they were playing patty cake.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the episode.
Yep, that's literally when the episode ends.
So I'm gonna apologize for this being like our most shitty discussion of our podcasts. I don't know what to say about this episode. It's a
I feel
weird
like this
one.
happened last time we were in person too. We didn't get a good episode to talk about.
Yeah. I almost thought about having us do another one after this because the next one's 21. But then I was gonna have us do that, but then I remembered it's the one where it's like a director's cut, so we'd have to watch like two versions. So.
Oh yeah.
And we're very busy because Dylan's here because we're filming a ton of stuff outside of this podcast. But yeah, so this wasn't the best one. I guess. Sorry, I don't know. Next week's gonna be great. I think.
I don't think it's necessarily a bad episode. It's just different and.
No, I think the episode's good. I don't think our discussion of the episode was good.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot to swallow and really hard to kind of talk about because it's all really abstract.
Yeah, and again, it's a lot of like existential stuff. So it's more stuff for you to think about. Like,
right.
What motivates you in life? What do you want to do? Like, what things are holding you back? It's not necessarily stuff that we are gonna necessarily. I don't even know how to discuss.
Exactly.
So I guess we need to get better at that because there's a lot more of that coming up. Yeah. But thanks for watching, guys. This is a short one, but hey, next week will be long because it's maybe my favorite episode, and we're watching two versions of it for the director's cut. So there's going to be all kinds of stuff. If anybody out there who's rewatching with us or whatever, if you've never seen the director's cut version, or if you've never seen the regular version, I'd maybe rewatch, or I guess for the first time watch the other version of the episode, because I think you should watch both versions of all these episodes. There's only a director's cut for these last 6 episodes. So you should definitely see both versions.
And I've only seen one, so I don't know which one it is. So
yeah,
that'd be interesting.
Actually, I don't know if I actually have seen the non-director's cut versions. I think I might have only ever seen the director's cut version.
I'm not sure which one I have, so we'll find out.
So I guess we should take our own advice on that. Comment, whatever. Send us. I almost said rate, comment, subscribe. It's a joke. It really helps us out. No, if you have any comments, feel free to email us. All that information is in the usual places in the description. But let us know what you think of this episode, and if you have any much more well thought out points to make about it than we did. Next week we're going to try to be a little bit more on
point.
On point, yeah. And I will say real quick, this is still kind of we're working out how this would happen. But we've had several people ask to be involved in the podcast or help out in some way, and we think that's a really cool idea. We really like interacting with fans of this and like discussing the show and things about the show with other people. So we really like the idea of trying to bring in some other people for this, but we've been trying to figure out how that would work. And I think what we're going to do is, instead of just bringing in someone on a single episode, it's easier to just kind of discuss any comments or messages you want to send us, and we'll discuss it on the podcast. But in terms of actually having people on to discuss with them, I don't think it would make sense to do that for a single episode. So what I think we're going to look into doing is, after the entire show is over, after we've done all of the show, and after we've done End of Evangelion, we will have a big special episode where we just discuss the entire show as a whole. Not the rebuilds, just the show and End of Evangelion. And, we might just talk a little bit about some of the parallels between the rebuilds, but we're not going to go too into that. But anybody who's interested and would like to be on that special, let us know. We're still working out what method we would use to record that. Maybe like Google Hangouts or Tiny Chat or something. If anybody has experience with managing a big group discussion like that, let us know, because we actually aren't totally sure on how to make that work. But if you're at all interested in appearing on that and just hanging out for a special edition of the podcast, talking about the entire show as a whole, let us know. This is still a ways off, but I want to go ahead and say this now so that we can start getting people's names in. And I already,
submit your applications.
Yeah, exactly, because we're not going to accept anyone. No, we'll probably, if you're interested, I'm sure there's a spot for you, unless there's a limit on those sites. And then I guess first come, first serve, or whoever could be scheduled for the time. But I don't think we're going to hit the limit. I'm not too worried about it. Yeah, and if you've already said you'd like to help out, I do have your names written down. But it doesn't hurt to just remind me that you're still interested or anything, because some people I haven't talked to in a while, so I don't know if you're still interested or still listening or anything. So again, that's a ways off, but if you want to go ahead and start getting that information in, and I'm not going to remind people every episode, but there will be a couple more reminders before we record it. We're not just going to only say it this once and then expect you to remember for the next however many weeks it is until we do that. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening, guys. Next week, brush up on your knowledge or watch episode 21, and we'll see you then.
Bye.